It's Halloween time. Let's take a haunted trip across America. Now I found this awesome road trip map on Discovery. If you want to screenshot this real quick, and we're going to get into it. First off, we have the Joshua Ward House in Salem, Massachusetts. Salem is known as the epicenter of witchcraft, of spooky witch-themed activities and fun. This building was built in 1784 and it was one of the first brick buildings to be built in Salem. And there have been reports of 3 spirits that are said to haunt this establishment. One of them being called the Strangler because many guests have said that they have felt hands, invisible hands, choking them. Next is the Lizzie Borden House in Fall River, Massachusetts. You've had to have heard of the Lizzie Borden story. She had an axe and she murdered her parents, they say. And she was acquitted. It's now a bed and breakfast that you can stay in, and many guests have reported feeling uneasy and that there was somebody else in the room with them when they were alone. Next off, if you're heading down by Sleepy Hollow, New York, you have to stop at the cemetery and visit Washington Irving's grave. He is, of course, the author of The Headless Horseman. Next off, we have the Amityville Horror House, made famous by many movies. Ed and Lorraine Warren also investigated here to try to find out what was going on. George and Kathy Lutz felt terror being there and eventually, drove them out of the home. But the true history is even darker than that. There was 6 members of the DeFeo family that were actually murdered here years prior. But then I've also heard that, the new owners haven't really experienced anything, so who knows? And if you're heading into Pennsylvania, Eastern Pennsylvania, we have Eastern State Penitentiary. Opened in 1829, it was one of the most expensive prisons in all of the world at the time. It once housed some of America's most notorious criminals like Al Capone. Now you can still go and visit there and they have evening events. A lot of the area is crumbling, but many say that they feel like there's still the ghosts of prisoners all around them. And of course, when you're heading across Pennsylvania, obviously you have to stop at Gettysburg, site of one of the bloodiest battles ever fought on U.S. soil. And I could be here all day talking about the ghost stories at this place. People see anything from intelligent hauntings to residual hauntings, such as soldiers marching across the yard. Heading into West Virginia, we have Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Operating from 1864 to 1994, it quickly became overcrowded and people were being malnourished, abused, you name it. Lobotomies were done here. When you enter the place, and I've done an overnight investigation here, you can definitely feel the spirits all around you, and it is extremely haunted. Next off, let's head into Ohio. Now this is the Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, said to contain one of the most haunted campuses in all of America. It was also the first institution of superior studies in all of the Appalachian region. And they say Wilson Hall is the most haunted area of the campus. In fact, they say that this campus stands in the center of a geographic pentagram. It's also said to be built over an ancient Indian burial ground. So all of this is a recipe for hauntings. Next off is the Masonic Temple in Detroit, Michigan. Now, Detroit, Michigan is kind of scary all on its own, but this place is supposed to be haunted. People have reported there being many cold spots, doors closing on their own, and just feeling like they are being watched. They even say the ghost of the temple's architect is still wandering the halls. Now let's head over to Chicago. Now this building is not standing any longer, but there is a post office in its place. And this was the H.H. Holmes Murder Castle in Chicago, Illinois. Now H.H. Holmes was a pharmacist and a murderer. He built this place to lure his female victims in there and to essentially murder them. Lots of nasty shit went on here, but it stood until about 1938 when it was torn down. The post office was put up, and now the post office and the workers are saying that they feel like something is watching them. Now let's head all the way down to Charleston, South Carolina. This building right here is the Old City Jail. It operated from 1802 to 1939. Now this place had its share of horrible people as well as bloodthirsty pirates and Civil War prisoners. One of its most infamous prisoners, though, was Lavinia Fisher, who was supposedly the first female serial killer in the USA. Let's head over to Savannah, Georgia, another extremely haunted city. This is the Hamilton Turner Inn in Savannah, Georgia, built in 1873 by a successful businessman. It was also the first house in Savannah that had electricity. Now, people have said that there's many ghosts haunting this place, but one of the ones that they do mention often is of a Civil War soldier who wanders the halls, as well as knocking on the doors. Now let's head down to Louisiana. Outside of New Orleans, this is the Myrtles Plantation. Now obviously it's a plantation, so a lot of horrible things have happened here, but it has been well preserved and many do visit it to stay as well as to eat. Now there's one particular spirit that many say that they see. There was even an image captured in 1992 of a little slave girl, and they nicknamed that the Legend of Chloe. Now while Chloe is probably the most well-known ghost at this establishment, she is not the only one. This is the St. James Hotel in New Mexico. Established in 1872, it was pretty big in its heyday, and that was during the times of the Santa Fe Trail. Now, many famous Western historical figures have been here: Annie Oakley, Wyatt Earp, and so on. Law and order was not a thing that typically happened out in the Wild West, and so it did end up having a reputation for violence. And they also say that 26 men lost their life within these walls. Now, many people say there are many spirits that haunt here, as well as smelling cigar smoke, and the place is non-smoking. They also say that if you don't see the ghosts, you definitely will hear them. Next off is the Stanley Hotel in Colorado. Now, I know most of you know this because of a famous horror movie with Jack Nicholson called The Shining. It dates back to 1909. Now, while the hotel was not actually where The Shining was shot, it was the inspiration. Stephen King and his wife stayed here prior, and a lot of what he wrote was about his stay in this hotel. Next up is the Hotel Monte Vista, and that is in Flagstaff, Arizona. Nicknamed the most haunted place in Arizona, it's off of the famous Route 66. Many spirits are said to haunt here. Prostitutes that were murdered, people passing through, and John Wayne actually had an odd occurrence here. He said that while staying here, someone would knock on his door and call out room service. When he'd open the door, there would be nobody there. Now, he complained of this occurrence happening many times, and the staff had said at the time that it was probably the Phantom Bellboy. Next up is the Whaley House in San Diego, California. It was built in 1857 and is considered one of the most haunted places in all of America. Now, they say that the Whaley family is said to haunt here, as well as the daughter Violet, who committed suicide inside the home. Next off is this place. Most of you know, this is the Winchester Mystery House, once owned by Sarah Winchester. As most of you know, is part of the Winchester Firearms. There was really no floor plan when this was made. She kind of just added more and more rooms, and it's like a labyrinth or a maze inside. They also said that she consorted with spirits inside of her home. They also said that these spirits were victims of the Winchester rifles. Now, 1922, she passed away, and at that point, any kind of construction ceased on the home, but you can visit it. Last off is the Pittock Mansion in Oregon. Many people have said that many spirits haunt this house. Windows have latched by themselves. There's also heavy footsteps and all the other stuff that combines for a recipe for hauntings. And the one good thing about this place is they say that the spirits are friendly, and it's all just them trying to interact with the guests. So how many of these places have you been to? Let me know in the comments. Bye! Happy Halloween!